that's where it started.
Hello, this is Paul.
This is Laura.
And I'm Alton.
We are Team Derringer.
And you are listening to Derringer Discoveries,
Where we take you, the listener, on an adventure.
a music adventure.
I was born from a woman's dreams. Had her nothing, she gave me everything.
All right, let's roll. Episode 65, Discovering Fox and Bones.
Listeners, with us today is a duo based out of Portland, Oregon. We have Sarah Vitort and Scott Gilmore.
Lost in a labyrinth.
They're an American duo recording and touring as Fox and Bones. Sarah, you get to go first. Would you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us about yourself and then hand it over to Scott?
Sure. So my name's Sarah Vitort. I'm from actually Vancouver, Washington, which is right outside Portland, Oregon. So I consider myself a Portland native, even though technically Washington. I've been playing music my whole life. My parents were both in the industry. My dad was in radio, sales, and my mom was a singer, a professional vocalist, a choir teacher, teacher for young kids in music. And so it was kind of expected that I would have music as a hobby, but I've been doing this as a career since my mid-20s.
This ain't the song that I thought I'd be writing tonight.
I did the whole college route and majored in broadcasting, actually. I wanted to be in TV news, but, could have gone the podcast route, I suppose. But ended up here. I feel like it was always inevitable that I would end up in music. So that's kind of the the real quick and dirty of my life.
Yeah, sounds good.
Over to you, Scott.
Roads, marrow of stone, purveyors of all that we thought that we know.
Well, thanks so much, Sarah. My name is Scott Gilmore from Fox and Bones. I've been playing music since early teens. After I realized my fledgling basketball career was no longer going to be a functional job for myself, I picked up the guitar and haven't looked back since, and have been playing in bands since I was about 17 or so. Although the first band I had stage fright, and so we never played any shows, but we wrote a bunch of songs. Luckily, I eventually got over the stage fright and have now been playing music with Sarah and Fox and Bones for about 9 years.
You were talking about your basketball career. We saw you recently in concert here in Charlottesville. I don't think you quite made it to 6'9", did you?
I did not. I had plans. I told my parents growing up, I told them I was going to be taller than my dad, who was about 6'4". I said I had plans about being 6'9", and apparently the growth hormones didn't work.
You still made 6 feet, though. You did pretty good.
Yeah.
I did. Not quite as tall as my dad. I'm still working on dunking a basketball, so got that on my bucket list.
For your future NBA career?
In case the music thing doesn't work out.
Yes. Yeah.
In case this doesn't work out, you've always got basketball.
Yeah.
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
With listeners in more than 30 countries.
He was a boxcar child, yeah, he lived his life by the trade.
She was a prom queen, did the wrong things, lit her up, leaving marks upon her veins.
Well, Sarah and Scott, some of our listeners, they're going to hear your name, Sarah and Scott. They're going to hear the name of your duo, Fox and Bones. But is there a connection between Sarah and Scott and Fox and Bones?
It's funny when people ask us because it kind of came about really naturally and without a lot of fanfare, the name. I think it started back 8 years ago when Scott and I met. I was wearing these clip-in fox ears a lot. I was just into that for some reason. So I think the first couple times we hung out, I had my fox ears on and Scott was calling me Foxy. So I think that probably started his wheels turning. And then we have a silly inside joke friend nickname that's Bones. And so I think he put those together at some point because one day, pretty early on actually in our writing process, he was like, if we make this a band, what do you think about the name Fox and Bones? And I was like, it's catchy. Let's go for it. But I think the most common question we get is who's Fox and who's Bones? And at the beginning, it was actually a concept album. Our first album was a concept album. So in the beginning, Fox and Bones were actually characters that technically weren't us, but definitely had parallels to our life. So while they're not our direct nicknames, it is kind of vaguely like reminiscent of Scott and I for sure.
Well, Sarah, it's good that you mentioned your debut album because that's one of the things I wanted to talk with the both of you about.
All right.
On your debut album, which is called The Remarkable Adventures of, and then I'm assuming that we fill it in with Fox and Bones.
Yes.
It was released in 2017. Your opening song on your debut album is called, appropriately enough, Intro.
Creative.
Yeah. In my ears, it sounds like it's autobiographical. Can you tell me, am I close? And if I am, or even if I'm not, just share with our listeners about this song called Intro from your debut album.
He was a boxcar child, yeah, he lived his life by the trade.
She was a prom queen, did the wrong things, lit her up, leaving marks upon her veins. The time that they met, they were ready to admit that the past was...
Yeah, I'm unfortunately going to prove you wrong. It's actually one of the least autobiographical songs. I think Intro was really to establish these characters of Fox and Bones, and because that they are these kind of caricatures that really have no, I don't know about you, Scott. The character of Fox definitely doesn't have a whole lot of bearing in my life necessarily, but their story, and I think this is what's really cool about the first album, is that we kind of created these fictional characters that were kind of like these down and out two people that meet and they leave their small town and they go out on some sort of an adventure that ends in a heist. So there's also a song on the record called The Heist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, basically it's a Bonnie and Clyde-esque story.
Well, I'm Miss Bonnie Parker, and this here's Mr. Clyde Barrow. We rob banks.
We've been digging around these days.
It feels very fictional, but also this idea of these two characters meeting and going out on an adventure and creating their life instead of taking what's been given to them. That has really resonated in Scott and I's life. And we feel like we almost wrote that album and wrote it into existence for ourselves, in the sense that once Scott and I met, we got the attention of a European booking agent. And within, 9 months of being in a band, we went on our first tour to Europe for 3 weeks. And that kind of kicked off our career. And from then on, we were living on the road basically for most of the year for the first couple of years of our career, just touring incessantly. And so the adventures of Fox and Bones did eventually kind of translate to our lives, and it actually inspired our lives in a way. And so it's almost backwards. We wrote it first about fictional characters, and then we lived it.
You better grab your mask and bag.
We don't wanna get caught, it's all we have.
We've been running so long against the law.
Hey, this is Anthony from Fantastic Cat coming to you from New York City. You are listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Hello, this is Tim in East London in the United Kingdom, and you're listening to Derringer Discoveries.
You're so easy to love.
Listeners, Fox and Bones is building a sizable following on the various digital streaming platforms, including Spotify. You guys are touring quite a bit. I think you just wrapped up your East Coast tour with Fantastic Cat. Now you're back on the West Coast touring. And on stage, you tell a pretty specific story about how you two met. And I know our listeners would like to hear that story.
Sure.
Yeah, I was doing something the kids call perving. I was looking at pictures of Sarah. She did not know that I was looking at them. I was looking at them quite often. I procured an invite to one of her shows from her manager under the guise of doing some business with him. And then I sat in the back of her show and I whispered and I pointed and gossiped like I was in high school. And after the show, I came up to Sarah and asked her if she'd want to write some music together, if she was interested in co-writing some songs. And luckily she said yes and didn't just scream and run away.
Well, and he's kind of burying the funniest part of the story, which is that the first moment that I met Scott, this was before I was playing. I had gone to the bathroom and I came back and he was sitting in my chair talking to my manager. And I was like, "Excuse me, sir, I was sitting there and I'd left all my stuff there, you know?" And he was like, "It's okay, I was just leaving. I only came over here to steal some stuff out of your bag." And that was the first thing he ever said to me. And for whatever reason, it was interesting enough for me to consider continuing talking to him.
I didn't do any stealing, just the threat.
Just the threat.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Just keep me guessing.
You got to be different. You got to, you know, there's so many people in the world. You got to say something interesting, something that's never been heard before. If you want to start a 9-year music career, you can't just say, "Hello." You got to say something strange.
Yeah, you swung for the fences on that one.
Props for a great opening line.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. Well, and I think Scott was kind of testing me to see if I was, you know, had the same type of humor and was as insane as him and his friends. And that definitely ended up being true. So he used the right line for me, but I don't know if it would have worked on anyone else.
If I were a castle, then you'd be my pillars of strength.
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Pillars of strength.
Hi, my name is Alana Joy, and I'm the lead singer of alternative rock band Lost Youth. I love listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Hey, this is Jimmy,
Tommy, and Galen of indie folk rock band The Curries.
You're listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Who among you are tired? Yeah, it's been a long road.
So listeners, since 2017, Fox & Bones has released 4 studio albums and a number of singles. Team Derringer will now count down our 5 favorite songs so far by Fox & Bones. So far. After we reveal each song on our way to number 1, we will ask Sarah and Scott to tell us, first, who wrote the song, and second, something interesting about the song. We've decided that ladies should go first, so Sarah, that honor goes to you. Scott, you'll go second, and you should each reveal something about the song. Paul, get us started with this countdown.
Derringer Discoveries pick number 5.
All right, Alton, thank you. Our pick number 5, with more than 200,000 streams so far on Spotify alone, our pick number 5 is from the second studio album by Fox & Bones. The album is called Better Land, and the song is Love Me Like a River.
Love me like a river.
Sarah, Scott, tell us about Love Me Like a River.
Yeah, so Love Me Like a River, I remember that we started writing it together. I think Scott started the song and we kind of put it together, and it is very much a duet. And so it did feel like, I think Scott started it and then was like, this feels like a back and forth type of song that we should be singing it to each other. My favorite anecdote about this song is that I'm a big music video person. I love to create music videos. It's maybe not the most practical thing in the current state of the industry, but it is really fun for me to come up with concepts and kind of see them come to life. And so for Love Me Like a River, at the time we were very inspired by the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I am the man of constant sorrow.
Oh, yeah, great movie.
Such a good movie. One of the best music movies of all time. But I wanted this video to be similar to the siren scene, where the sirens lure the guys into the water.
Go to sleep, you little babe. Go to sleep, you little babe. Go to sleep, you little babe. Go to sleep, you little.
And so that is what we ended up doing. And so I kind of get this scene where I get to kind of playfully drown Scott in the river. And I kind of like keep coming in and out of focus as if I'm kind of like appearing and disappearing. And it was really cool. It was definitely the first music video that we really took a full concept and executed it. And it's one of my favorites still to this day.
Love me like a river runs through your hands. Hold me like the only thing that ever understands. Speak to me in the shadow.
Love Me Like a River was recorded at the Rye Room, and it was produced by our European tour booker, Dominic Schmidt of Rolo Music. There was a fun collaboration because so far, Sarah and I had brought a lot of our songs to the studio and just recorded them as we went, and having a producer for that song really kicked it up a notch, including the modulation at the end of the song where you can hear it kind of hit another level, and then the counter melodies going underneath there.
Speak to me in the shadows, revealing
was a lot of fun as a teamwork project to be working with our booker and kind of manager at the time.
Dark as the nighttime, close as you can, fierce as an animal with the hunger for expanse.
Listeners, at pick number 5, that's Love Me Like a River by Fox and Bones from their second studio album Better Land.
Jij luistert naar Derringer Discoveries, een muziekavonturenpodcast.
Laura, what's Team Derringer's pick number 4?
Derringer Discovery's pick number 4.
Paul, at pick number 4 with more than 300,000 streams. Pick number 4 is from Fox and Bones' third studio album called American Alchemy, and the song is A Strange and Wondrous Place.
What's it all worth anyway?
Take it away, Sarah.
Can you measure life in numbers? And if
I'm actually going to give this one to Scott because Scott was the architect of this song.
Ah, okay. Take it away, Scott.
Time doesn't know the shape we're in, but we keep trying our best to explain.
A Strange and Wondrous Place was written in a tiny bedroom in East Portland over 1 day span and was recorded at the Rye Room with Matt Greco. This is one of my favorite songs that we had. It came out so naturally and organically. The lyrics and the melody kind of fused. Like sometimes when you're writing a song, it takes days, it takes weeks, it takes months. You get stuck on things. And with this one, it really flowed out so simply.
Some people hit the ground running while others take a lifetime to crawl.
I'll often write songs from my kind of overnight experiences. That's where lyrics will come. And this is one of those songs that has all sorts of different ideas compounded into one about what I was feeling at the time and how life was. And then our guitarist, Peter Marcotte, helped punch up the song a little bit because it used to originally be a more rocking song, and he had to slow it down, and he had it added some color and texture to the chords, and that's how we found the final product of what it is now.
What a strange and wondrous place we're in.
Listeners, that's pick number 4, A Strange and Wondrous Place by Fox and Bones from their third studio album, American Alchemy. Alton, take it away. What's number 3?
Hallo zusammen, hier ist Rainer vom Retrowave-Projekt UAP aus Holzminden im schönen Weserbergland. Ich höre Derringer Discoveries, ein Musikabenteuer-Podcast.
This is Addison from Fort Worth, Texas. We are all listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Derringer Discovery's pick number 3.
Listeners, our next 3 picks 3, 2, and 1, are all 3 from the current album by Fox and Bones. The album is called Long Time Honey and was released May 17th of this year, 2024.
Another town that we're leaving. Another friend.
It's their 4th studio album and has more than 420,000 streams on Spotify as of this podcast.
Take me down to the house by the river. Take me home.
Our pick number 3 from this album is House by the River. Who wants to go first on this one?
I'll take this one to start.
All right.
So House by the River was the first in the collaborations of us with Greg Holden. So that was the first song we came up with together in the studio. And it was very much a shift, like Scott said, of the type of songwriting that we would do.
The idea was that we were going to keep on writing and figure something out as we went.
And Greg had the that opening riff. He was playing it over and over while we were talking about things. And he was like, I'm going to keep playing this riff until you guys like it enough to make a song out of it. He just kind of was like subliminal messaging it while we're talking about other things. He's playing this riff. And so we're like, you know what? Yes, let's run with it. Like, this seems to be like coming to you for a reason.
Sometimes things just fit.
this song was really interesting because we ended up writing about a sentiment that I think Scott and I were feeling very deeply, but hadn't thought to write about yet, which is that we've been on the road a lot in our 8-year career, and we have a dream of having a big piece of land for all of our friends to live on, and kind of this collaborative artist space that we can come home to, somewhere that's quite the opposite of being on the road. And that dream is still out there, but it's always been a Fox and Bones thing to write about what we want to see come to us, whether out in the world or to us personally. You know, we've kind of used music as a tool for manifestation in a lot of songs in the past. And so this song kind of came together in pieces. Like we said, the riff came first. And then I think the Take Me Down to the House by the River, that just popped into my head. We had started kind of crafting this melody, and we were just kind of mumble singing. You know, sometimes you'll have a melody and you'll just kind of mumble words and you'll see what feels right. And I was just like, take me down to the house by the river. That's what I kept hearing.
Take me down to the house by the river. Take me home.
So then once we had that line, we were able to craft the song around it, because once we had that line, we realized what the song was about. You know, it's about this idea of having this peaceful place to have respite from the road and to actually have a home for the first time in our life, in our careers anyway. And so the song kind of came together. We finished it pretty much in a day in the studio. What has resulted is probably, it's one of the songs that I feel like touches people the most when they hear it. It's just a song for people who dream about having something of their own.
Take me down to the house by the river. Take me home.
Listeners, that's the Derringer Discovery pick number 3, House by the River by Fox and Bones, from their very latest studio album, Long Time Honey. Paul, what's at number 2?
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Derringer Discoveries pick number 2.
It was a stormy night. I told Bones I'm gonna get back.
Alton, thank you for asking. Number 2 is, as Alton mentioned, from the same album, their current album, which is jam-packed with wonderful songs. In fact, it's very hard to not pick them all, but we had to, because we have to keep it down to 5. So at number 2 is a song that gets your attention right from the get-go. It's very upbeat. It's got a great drum beat going to it. It's called Tricks, Tricks. Love it. Sarah, what is Tricks all about?
Tricks now, baby. Oh, can you believe that we made it this far? Made it this far.
So Tricks is going back to the story we told earlier about the night Scott and I met, and about how he threatened to steal from me. Tricks is about that. And so Tricks is an interesting one because it actually was Scott started that song on his own. And that was one of the few that we actually did bring to the studio. And Greg helped us hone. So Scott had kind of left that second verse for me, which is very reminiscent of the way that we used to write. One of us would kind of write the majority of a song, and then we would leave kind of that duet, that second verse or whatever, for the other person.
I put on a show.
And that's what Tricks ended up being. And so he kind of tells his story in the first verse, I tell mine in the second verse, and then we kind of come together and we switch off on that last verse. At least we switched off lines that we wrote. And then that's how we sing it as well.
Scott, anything you want to add to Tricks?
So you have to have a few tricks up your sleeve to make it in the music industry. Besides work ethic, you also have to, have some skills that you develop and ways to keep money coming in, but also keep working, keep playing shows, and also mental health balances. And those first two verses are like the tricks that Sarah and I have developed and that Sarah and I have throughout life. But the third verse brings it home that it's that with this idea that while we're focused on our little tricks, the whatever cosmic thread that pulls everything together and holds everything together. If you think there's us humans have tricks, well, what about the tricks that like the cosmic force holds together throughout the whole universe? And so it's this idea that like all this thread is interwoven together intergalactically through some force. And so I just love that aspect of it.
got your style and the way you draw the room in.
You're always right, except when it comes to everything.
You can be Gwen and I will be the nameless basic.
When the chips are down, I know you'll pull your pocket aces. We got tricks now, baby. Oh, can you believe that we made it this far? Made it this far.
Listeners, at number 2, that's Tricks by Fox and Bones from their current album called Long Time Honey. Laura, what's Team Derringer's pick number 1?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Julian Taylor from Toronto, Canada, and I have enjoyed listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Derringer Discoveries pick number 1.
Fill up your cup. Don't you dare break it. Is it ever enough?
Paul, like you said, it's really hard to pick. But we did pick a number 1. It's the title track from Long Time Honey, and the song is aptly named Long Time Honey.
This road is only one way. There's heat in the air. I know it's been a long time, honey. Feels like we're getting there.
Who wants to take the lead on this one?
I'll start, since this is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I get to sing lead on this one. It was very much a collaborative effort writing, but there was a point where Scott was actually singing the lead, and I was like, I think this is my song. I think this is mine. I just felt it. So I was like, move over, Scott. This is my turn.
Yeah, definitely sulked for a few moments as Sarah became the lead of the song. But once I heard what her and Greg were, like the direction they were going, and then had the opportunity to learn some harmonies for it, I knew it was for the better. Like you got to follow the lightning. And at that point, Sarah had stood up and really took the song to where it wouldn't have been without her standing up and fighting for her vision for it.
Go get what you want. There's no use in waiting. Can't take it to the grave.
Part of the reason that I felt a lot of ownership is that the way that it started to come together in the studio, it had a lot of influences of bands that I really love. I really wanted to write like a very cinematic song that had like a lot of tom fills.
Once lost in the distance, like a last-ditch prayer.
And, it was very driving, and that kind of came together. And so we ended up changing the key so that it would work better for my voice. But this song for me is really about my experience of the music industry. I think that Scott is, and thankfully we're very different. Scott is very optimistic. He very much tries to keep a positive attitude or put a positive spin on things. And for me, I'm a little bit more the realist. I'm always like, okay, but this is the dream, but is this realistic? What do we have to do to make this happen? And a lot of times the pessimist, where I'm like, maybe this won't happen. Maybe things will never happen. And so Scott and I are kind of this juxtaposition. I think it works well, because having a realist in the group does make you think about things and be very thorough in the things that you do. But having an optimist in the group keeps you moving forward. I would very much get stuck in my own world if it weren't for Scott's prodding sometimes. And so this song is really about the juxtaposition of those two ideas when it comes to perseverance in the music industry. I think, it is a hard career, and there's a lot of things that are difficult. We've been at this a long time. That's where Long Time Honey came from. I know it's been a long time, honey. It feels like we're getting there. And Scott would say, and we have a song on our last album called Already Here. So Scott would always say, we're already here. We've already made it by the fact that we're doing it. And for me, it just feels like over this last couple of years, the opportunities we've been getting, I feel like we're kind of starting to get there in the sense of what I had dreamed for our career. Yeah. And so, this song just feels like this. There is some yearning and some longing there, but there also is some positivity of being like, hey, this is happening. For me, I feel like we're finally starting to turn the corner of this music career and move towards something that I had dreamed of.
This road is only one way. There's a heat in the air. I know it's been a long time, honey. Feels like we're getting there.
And so I love singing this one live. It's one of my favorite songs to sing. And it felt like the natural title for the album, because a lot of the songs on the album are about perseverance. It's one of our less like overly optimistic albums. It's a very real album that's really talking about a lot of the struggles that we've had in this career and in our lives. And so it felt like the correct album title, just because it really did encompass all of the songs as well as just this song itself.
Yeah, see, Paul, there's a realist in every group.
Yeah. We have, I'm the optimist. Alton always brings me down a few notches.
Just brings him down.
And Laura, what's your role? You're the referee?
The referee.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, actually.
That's Greg for us. We didn't realize how much we needed a referee until Greg came in and started mediating. We're like, oh, that's really nice to have. So
yeah.
That's an important job.
Listeners, at pick number 1, that's the title track, Long Time Honey by Fox and Bones from their current studio album, Long Time Honey.
Hi, this is Tim Ryan from Studio 607 in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we're all listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Sarah, do you have any shout outs for friends, family, or fans?
Yeah, I think we should definitely always shout out both sets of parents, because Scott and I are very lucky that both of our sets of parents have been super supportive. Ann and Jerry Vitort are my parents. They've really done their part 10 times over at this point. And then Scott's folks, Etta and Eric Gilmore, they're out in the Bay Area, and they're also home base for us on tour. We go down there quite a bit. They've been supporting Scott since his very early music and when he was playing at skate parks. And we really owe a lot to our respective families for all their support over the years. We also have shouted out Greg Holden a lot, but he is our collaborator on this new record, and we couldn't have done it without him. We were introduced by a super fan named Craig Hampel, so we've got to shout Craig out. He's one of the executive producers on our album, as well as Jonathan Fromm, who is very involved in the Tucson Folk Festival. They were two of our executive producers, and they've been huge parts of our career as well. Am I missing anyone, Scott?
Yeah, I'd like to Pedro Coloni for doing the mixing of the album. Why Not Jansville for mastering the album. Of course, Beatrice Kimmel for setting this all up and for doing publicist work for a lot of this record. And then Fantastic Cat, who brought us on tour, and that's how we all met each other.
Yeah.
So thanks to them for having us out on shows, and we'll be playing with them on the West Coast in September with the full band on 4 dates. So looking forward to that too.
Sarah and Scott, thank you for joining Derringer Discoveries today. When we have a special guest joining us for an episode, we like to bestow a special honor at the end of the episode. And it is something that may get you 10% off on your next cup of coffee. I can't guarantee it, but perhaps it may. And that is, you are now both honorary Derringers. So to put that in how it sounds, that will be Sarah Derringer and Scott Derringer. Welcome to the club.
And there was much rejoicing.
Thank you so much. We feel very honored. I'm going to name drop that all around town.
This has been Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast. Song snippets that were used in this episode were used to aid in the discussion, critique, and analysis of the songs. We encourage listeners to support Fox and Bones by listening to them on your favorite digital streaming platforms.
And definitely go check out a Fox and Bones show. Scott, I think you mentioned that you guys are continuing to tour. Can listeners find that information on your website or social media channels? And if so, give us the information on those.
Yeah, you can find our tour schedule at foxandbones.com. So that information is also up on our Bands in Town account at Fox and Bones, and we are at Fox and Bones across all of our socials, so we should be easy to find.
Awesome.
You can also follow us on social media. We're at Derringer Discoveries on Facebook and at Derringer Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads.
Until next time, this is Laura Derringer.
I'm Alton Derringer.
I'm Paul Derringer.
And this is Scott Gilmore, also an honorary Derringer.
And Sarah Vitort, also an honorary Derringer, and the band Fox and Bones.
And listeners, this has been the Fox and Bones episode of Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
In your sister's room. That's where it started. In your sister's
I've now been playing music with Sarah and Fox and Bones for about 9 years.
I'm going to go off script here for a quick second, and I've got to give an honorable mention to All on Red. I love that song. It is so good, and there's a line in there that's something to the effect of, now is always the time, here is always the place. And I love that sentiment. It's like, whatever that thing you're dreaming of that you want, what are you waiting for? Just try, go get it. I love that.
Thank you.
That probably came from the optimist of the group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely my corner of the market.
Wait, Laura, go ahead and back announce your selection.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, I thought I did.
Well, you introduced it, but just say that was...
Oh, sorry.
If anyone is interested in traveling to the Northwest in wintertime, in January, it'll definitely be worth your while. It's a really special festival, and it's just become such a staple of the local community here.
Excellent.
It'll be a good trade-off since you're going to Tucson in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Just really hitting all the right spots at the right times, you know?